Hey, everybody. Welcome to this week's Masterclass. We have a special guest of ours, Frank Maselli. And Frank is a part of, first of all, he's been a financial advisor for years, but he was introduced to the Financial Advisors Alliance through White Glove Workshops, who we had partnered with and had a whole week about their services a few weeks back. So Frank had agreed to come and share his story and specifically talk about how seminars had transformed his business and how he's seen them transform the businesses of other advisors as well. So Frank, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here finally.
Awesome. So Frank, why don't you give us a little snapshot about your backstory, your career, just to bring some people up to speed. And then I have a couple of specific questions that we'll go through.
Sure. Very briefly, 35 years in the business. I started as an advisor with a major wirehouse. I became a branch manager with another wirehouse, and ended up running a mutual fund family in Boston for a number of years, and had a pretty remarkable set of experiences in the business. But I've been training advisors for over 30 years, and I've been doing seminars for probably 34 of the 35 years that I've been in the business.
How many seminars have you done?
Written 3 best-selling books. I have done, I counted it pretty accurately once. I've done over 4,000 public seminars.
Wow.
Which is quite a lot. And at my peak as an advisor, I was doing 7 a week, which that's a lot of seminars.
Yeah.
So I've got a lot of seminar experience here.
There you go. Awesome. And you were mentioning something about some books that you have written?
Well, the first book I wrote is called Seminars, The Emotional Dynamic, which is sort of the foundation principle of everything I teach. It's now in its 4th edition. I wrote a book called Referrals, The Professional Way. And then I wrote my new book is called 40 Tips for the Under 40 Advisor, because we've got a whole new generation of people, as you well know, coming into this profession, and it's very exciting, but they do need some help. So it's kind of interesting. So 3 books at the moment.
Awesome. What's been some of the biggest learning lessons over your, call it 4,000 at bats, so to speak, with the seminars from, your first one through your most recent or your last one? What were some of the main, learning curves that you have overcome and it's had an impact on your business?
Sure. Great question. And there's so many things to talk about in this area, but I would say the biggest set of lessons that I've learned in doing seminars is that, number one, people do love seminars, the audience. There is a natural human, it's just a human experience that we have very deep in our DNA about coming together. So the first thing I would say is I think people really love that experience. They love to learn. They love to join others in a group setting. Very, very powerful native experience that we have as humans. The second thing, and this has been, the biggest single revelation from a professional standpoint, is that seminars are an emotional experience. They're not an intellectual experience. And I know that sounds a little weird. Let me rephrase that. They are partly an intellectual thing. There's teaching that has to go on. There's numbers and statistics and, all the stuff that we love to talk about in this business. But overwhelmingly, they are an emotional experience. And as an advisor, to have success in a seminar, business success come from a seminar, you've got to hit these emotions. There are very specific emotions that we've identified in the audience's mind. And if you hit these emotions, you're never going to worry about doing business from a seminar. If you don't hit the emotions, it's a crapshoot, and good luck. Maybe you set 1 appointment or 2 appointments. So, very much an emotional experience, and we've drilled down into that scientifically. So it's very powerful.
Awesome. So specifically, what are some of the emotions that you found are most prevalent in the seminars that you run?
Sure. Well, I've identified 9 specific emotions. I call these the 9 critical emotions, and it's just, I try to simplify things. You could parse these out into further, very detailed nuances. But the biggest emotion is liking. You've got to get the audience to like you. And there are very simple ways to do that. And then there are subtle ways to do that. But the biggest one is to be genuine, to be authentic, to be likable in a pure sense, not in a contrived sense. There are also things that you can do to get the audience to like you before the seminar even begins. Things you do with the invitation, things you do with the room setting, how or if you serve refreshments or food, the kinds of food you serve, the seating arrangements. I mean, there's so many variables that go into this. So, but here's the key: if the audience likes you, you could probably miss the other 8 emotions in our 9 emotion set, and they will still find a reason to do business with you. If the audience does not like you, they will find a reason to not do business with you. You could have done the greatest seminar in the world, but if they don't like you, so that's the big one. Understanding, respect, confidence, fear. Fear is an interesting one. We don't scare people at seminars. And that's an important difference. Many years ago, we had to scare people. These
Right.
days, people are already scared. And what we try to do is calm them down and allay their fears or reduce their fears. So fear is a big one. You got to understand fear. Enthusiasm is a big one. Passion. So there are 9 emotions. They're a lot of fun. We call them the lurch face emotions. That's the acronym: like, understanding, respect, confidence, happiness, fear, action, change, and enthusiasm. It's a lot of fun to simplify it that way, I think.
Awesome. Now, how are you captivating the audience, from the get-go? So let's move past, right, the seating arrangements, the refreshments, things like that. Your opening,
Sure.
call it, 60, 120 seconds, whatever the opening is. What are you saying, and how are you positioning yourself at the very beginning to captivate them and position yourself as the expert?
Very, very important issue. The first 2 minutes of that workshop, I think, are critical to set the tone for the entire evening. And what we recommend is something called the power opening. The power opening, and there's many forms of the power opening.
Mm-hmm.
They go from extremely dramatic and very, very powerful to less, a little bit more subtle. And it depends on your style, depends on your audience. But contrasting the power opening with the plain vanilla opening, which is, "Hi, welcome to the seminar. My name's Frank Maselli. Glad you're here, blah, blah, blah." I don't do any of that. I come in dramatic and I do something. I do one of the ones that we recommend is called the dollar bill opening. Dollar bill is a lot of fun. I stand up in front of the room in total silence. I don't say a word. I don't introduce myself or anything like that. And I begin to rip a dollar bill and I explain what I'm doing. This is your retirement nest egg. Uncle Sam wants a piece. Healthcare wants a piece. And I systematically rip the dollar till it comes down to a very small little chunk. And I say, this is your piece. And this is not enough to live on. And the kids move home. They want to live on the couch, for 10 years. It's a lot of fun. It's a very dramatic opening. The other one I do, especially in retirement workshops, is something we now use called the never before opening. And this is an interesting discussion, and it's completely unknown to people in a very interesting way. We understand retirement in an intuitive sense, and we certainly understand it intellectually. Retirement, simple. But if you really think about retirement, in the entire history of the planet Earth, retirement has never existed before. The previous generation of Americans, and frankly the entire world, the previous generation didn't live in retirement. This is the first time in the history of Earth that we have had 70 million people in our country living in retirement, and it's a completely new phenomenon. And we talk about this, and it really gets people going, wow, that's right. This is brand new. We're not prepared for this. And every advisor knows the statistics on lack of preparedness for retirement, but this opening just puts it in such a dramatic context that people sit back in their seats and they go, oh my God, this is going to be great. This is all new stuff that we haven't learned before. So the opening is designed to get people excited, and we have many ways to do that. It's a lot of fun.
Awesome. So fast forward through the actual content, and I'm sure, you haven't done the same presentation 4,000 times, right? There's various, topics that you're utilizing, but when you're actually going to the close, if you will, or the closing section, are you avoiding the sales hat, so to speak? How are you offering value for them to come and actually meet with you? How are you transitioning them from, butts in the seat to, actual paying clients?
Sure. The close, there's a two-part close, and we do the first thing we do is something called the appointment close. The appointment close is where we explain to the audience in very simple terms and easy to understand terms what the appointment is going to look like. I don't pitch product. I don't sell anything. The seminar sells the advisor. Okay, and the quality of the delivery, the quality of the workshop is what people will bond to. So, but even having done a fantastic seminar, I think you need some kind of a close that explains the appointment, takes that fear of the appointment away, because there's still a little resistance. There's one thing about sitting in a group, but there's a completely other thing about coming in one-on-one. So what we try to do in the end is take that fear away. We talk about the appointment, what's it going to look like, where we're going to do it, how long is it going to take, what should you bring, and we make it as easy as possible for the people in the room to go, oh, okay, that's a comfortable thing. Nobody's going to sell me anything. It's going to be very low pressure. So the appointment close, there's a very specific set. We put a couple of slides up. There's some very specific slides that you can bolt onto the end of any workshop you do. It's product neutral. And then the final thing we do is something called the emotional close. Again, back to the emotional content, where we bring everybody together on an emotional level and we say, look, covered a lot of ground here tonight. I want to sell you on something before we leave. I told you I wasn't going to sell you, but I am going to sell you. I want to sell you on yourself. I want to sell you on your ability to understand this, and I want to give you the confidence to know that you can retire securely. You can reach your goals. These things are not beyond you. And there's language that goes with all of this, but the final message is a powerful, emotional, upbeat message. It really works very nicely.
And what do you find, of the people in the room, what do you find is a typical, and obviously, someone with your experience may have a higher conversion rate than maybe someone just starting off sort of, understanding and learning that themselves and their delivery. But at your peak and with your seminar specifically, what was your typical conversion rate from people in the audience to actual clients?
My numbers are a little skewed because of the experience level, and you're absolutely right. Well, after you've done 1,000 workshops, you kind of figure out what works. I would say in the beginning, my appointment ratio was pretty strong. I had been an Army officer before coming into the business, and I kind of knew how to. I knew how to give a presentation, a pretty solid presentation. So my appointment ratio started out at about 50% appointments, which is pretty high. Right now, the average workshop is not that high. Ultimately, my appointment ratio climbed quite dramatically. But my experiences are not common. I think the average advisor should expect in the beginning maybe a 30% appointment ratio, and that's with no training, no skills, raw talent.
Yeah.
Okay, because advisors do have talent. There's no question about that. We're natural hams. But when you begin to learn some of the techniques, when you begin to understand the emotional dynamic, your appointment ratio climbs. And now we get to 50, 60, 70% appointment. When you can get to a 70% appointment ratio, oh my God, I mean, seminars become a tremendously powerful business tool. Below 50%, it's kind of like luck of the draw, but at 50, 60, 70%, you've got a fantastic business model that can sustain you for the rest of your career, and you're having a lot of fun doing it.
Right.
So, why not? And it's easy to do. We can get you to 50% on technique alone. You don't need any skills at all. We give you technique, and it'll get you to 50% appointment ratio. Beyond that, you need a little skill, and we can teach that to you.
Awesome. What are some of the quick tips that you have for people as they're exploring getting into the seminar space? Just like a few quick things that may help bridge that gap.
Well, the number one thing is don't be afraid to give it a try. I mean, there are new ways of marketing out there that take all the risk away from you. And you mentioned white glove earlier. White glove to me is one of the greatest inventions since crunchy peanut butter. I mean, they take the complete financial risk away from the advisor, which makes it possible for any advisor who wants to try a seminar, even with no experience, to legitimately give it a shot. It can work. So don't be afraid anymore. There's no reason to fear seminars. Number two is let your passion come out. The audience will not understand 90% of what you talk about. Okay, no matter how you dumb it down, they're still not going to grasp the concepts. What they're looking for is somebody who is genuine, very likable, and has some enthusiasm and passion. And that's what they will bond to. So let that joy come out. And the final thing I would say is always remember, especially if you're relatively new in the business, this is a big fear that newer advisors have. Oh, they're going to know more than me. No, no one knows as much as you do.
Right.
You could be one day in the business and you already have more knowledge than 99% of the people out there. The one thing you don't have as a newer advisor is an understanding of history, which the audience may have because they may be older. They've been investing longer than you've been alive. But you can study history, become a student of the business, and let that love for the profession come through. So a long-winded answer, but have fun. I mean, seminars are tremendous fun. I don't think there's any other marketing modality that's as enjoyable for the advisor as a workshop. So let that joy come through and the audience will bond to you.
Yeah, I mean, clearly having done, 7 a week and over 4,000 in your career, it's something that, you've really gravitated towards and, really became an expert of that craft. And like you said, if you find that way of marketing your business that's enjoyable, it doesn't really feel like work anymore, right? It just feels like, you're going out, you're having fun, you're shaking hands, and you're getting to know the people in the community. And through that, not only are you, becoming an expert of your craft, but you're also positioning yourself as the expert, right? If you are at the same locations, on a weekly basis, right? I'm sure you've gotten customers that are a part of those establishments, not just the attendees, because you utilize their facilities so frequently. You position yourself as the expert, and then people are in turn gravitated towards you.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the seminars, just standing up in front of a room gives you credibility and power that other marketing modalities don't have. They don't afford you that. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Just doing seminars does position you as an expert in the community. It can be very, very powerful for your career.
Awesome. Well, Frank, I really appreciate the time. I know our audience is going to enjoy this episode. What I'm going to do is when I actually make the post, if you can shoot me an email with the links to your 3 books, I want to include that in the post as well. That way people have access to that information, and we'll make them aware of all that stuff as well. So thank you so much for joining. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate your patience getting this done. So take care.
Awesome.